You know that feeling that starts a few weeks before your birthday. Not excitement, not even sadness, exactly. Something quieter than that. A low hum of dread that sits underneath everything you do, and you can't quite explain it, not to anyone else, and sometimes not even to yourself. If you're an INFJ, this is probably familiar. The calendar turns, someone mentions your birthday is coming up, and something inside you tightens. You start planning ways to be unreachable that day. You feel guilty for not wanting a party. You feel guilty for wanting one and not trusting anyone will actually show up in the way you need. And underneath it all, there's this strange, heavy question you can't shake. What am I supposed to feel right now? This video is about that feeling, the quiet dread before your own birthday, where it comes from, why it makes complete psychological sense, and why it isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. Let's name it first, because naming something is the beginning of understanding it. What you're feeling isn't quite anxiety, and it isn't quite depression. It's closer to something called anticipatory grief. That's a term from psychology that usually gets applied to loss, grieving something before it's actually gone. But INFJs experience a version of it around birthdays, and it has a very specific shape. You're grieving the year that's ending before it ends. You're grieving the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. You're grieving connections that didn't deepen the way you hoped. You're grieving the gap between the inner life you actually live and the outer life other people seem to expect you to be celebrating. And you're doing all of this quietly because no one around you seems to understand why a birthday would feel like this. To understand why INFJs feel this so intensely, we have to talk about how your mind actually works. Carl Jung, who developed the theory that eventually became the MBTI, described introverted intuition, the dominant function for INFJs, as a process that constantly connects the present moment to a long, unfolding pattern of time. You don't experience today as just today. You experience it as a point on a much longer arc. Every moment is quietly compared to what came before it and what might come after it. This is why birthdays hit differently for you. For most people, a birthday is a single day, a number, a cake. For an INFJ, a birthday is a checkpoint on a timeline your mind has been silently tracking for years. It forces your intuition to do something it usually does in the background. Take stock, compare, notice the distance between where you thought you'd be and where you actually are. And your intuition is very, very good at noticing that distance. So when other people say, "Why are you being weird about your birthday?" It's just a day. They aren't wrong from their perspective. For them, it might really be just a day. For you, it's a mirror. And mirrors are exhausting when you already spend most of your life looking inward. There's another layer to this, and it comes from research on highly sensitive people. The psychologist Elaine Aron, who coined the term highly sensitive person, found that people with high sensory processing sensitivity, which most INFJs test into, process emotional and social information much more deeply than others. Aron's research shows that HSPs don't just feel more, they think more about what they feel. They notice more details, hold on to them longer, and integrate them into a larger emotional picture. Now apply that to a birthday. The day itself carries an enormous amount of emotional information. Who reached out? Who didn't? What was said? What wasn't said? The tone of the message from that one friend. who used to text you paragraphs and now texts you happy bidet. The absence of someone who's no longer in your life, the presence of people you're not sure how you feel about anymore. For a highly sensitive INFJ, all of that is not background noise. It's the whole day. Every small signal gets processed, weighted, and quietly filed. And your nervous system knows this is coming. That's part of what the dread is. Your system bracing for a day that will require enormous emotional processing, whether you want it to or not. There's also something deeper happening, something more existential. Birthdays ask you to celebrate the fact of your existence, and INFJs have a complicated relationship with that, not because you don't want to exist, but because your existence has often felt like something you had to justify. You spent your childhood being told you were too sensitive, too quiet, too deep, too much, and too little at the same time. You learned early that being yourself wasn't automatically celebrated. It was often something you had to soften or explain or apologize for. So when a day arrives that asks everyone to look at you and say, "We're glad you're here," some part of you doesn't quite know how to receive that, because the version of you being celebrated is often a version other people can see, and the version of you that actually lives inside you, that thinks the thoughts you never say out loud, that feels the things no one has ever fully witnessed. That version doesn't get a birthday. That version stays hidden even on the day meant to honor you. That gap is where the dread lives. Here's what I want you to hear. This dread isn't a symptom of something broken in you. It's a symptom of how deeply you live. People who don't feel this before their birthdays aren't more well-adjusted than you. They just aren't processing what you're processing. They aren't tracking the arc of their life the way your intuition tracks yours. They aren't holding the weight of every small signal the way your sensitivity holds it. You are, and that is not a flaw. That is a specific texture of an INFJ mind moving through time. Your system works the way it does, and it doesn't need fixing. So what do you do with this? Not fix it, not force yourself into performing joy, not cancel everything either out of a preemptive retreat. What you can do is honor what's actually happening. Let the day be quiet if it needs to be quiet. Let the reflection happen instead of resisting it. If your intuition wants to review the year, let it. If your sensitivity wants space to feel everything the day brings up, give it space. You don't owe anyone a celebration that isn't yours, and you don't owe yourself a performance of gratitude either. What you can offer yourself is honesty. This is a hard day for me, and it's hard because I feel things deeply, and that's not a problem to solve. The dread will still come next year. It probably comes every year, but once you understand what it actually is, anticipatory grief, deep processing, and intuition doing its quiet accounting, it stops feeling like something is wrong with you. It starts feeling like something is true about you. And true things, even the heavy ones, are easier to carry than confusing ones. If any of this felt familiar tonight, you're not alone. There are more of us than it seems, quietly dreading the same days, quietly noticing the same things, quietly making sense of a life most people move through without pausing. There is no rush here, only awareness, only the slow work of understanding yourself from the inside out. A quiet place for deep minds,